here to discuss all things NRL and anything sports related. Please give a warm Aussie g'day to the footy fanatic and America's own Corey Jackson in Outside the Sheds.
Greetings and salutations and welcome to Outside the Sheds, a show, Shedheads, that has gone worldwide, a show that, okay, let's be honest, a lot of you Shedheads have been here from the beginning. We've had downloads from Ireland, from Russia, and I love my KGB listeners too, by the way, or if that's FSB, I apologize. But what I'm trying to say is we've had downloads all over the world, and it's something that really touches my heart because the game has touched my heart. And for me to be able to come on to this platform, express my love to the game, get my feeling out, to get my opinion out, and for you guys to ingest it, take it in, and say, you go, Shedadamas. That, to me, is what makes this show roll. That's what makes me get excited week in and week out to come and give you guys the best content we possibly can give you. Now, with that being said, it's been a big week. It's been a big week for your Shedda. I got to be on another episode with the great Andrew Voss, the great Greg Alexander, a.k.a. Brandy, and got to do their morning show again. And I really had a good response from their listeners coming back in and actually subscribing to the podcast, sending me information on my Instagram page. So it's been an exciting week, an exciting week, and something that's really, I don't know. Maybe it's just thrown a few of those beans in the ground as that beanstalk continues to grow up into the sky. But either way you want to say it, welcome if this is your first episode you've listened. We've been doing this a while now. I'm sorry you're just coming to the party now. I apologize about that. But one of the beautiful things about social media, okay, forget social media. Who cares about it? Well, one of the beautiful things about communications, I'm a communications guy, is that we can all go back now and listen to all of these episodes that we've done. We've done quite a few of them. We've been doing this for a while. This rodeo just didn't start last week. These horses have been running. Now, with that being said, welcome. We're going to have another great episode. And I've got to say this right off the bat. How can we not have another great episode? Because to start this whole thing off, we go into round 2 breakdown. And I don't know if anyone can say that they watched this last round and not say, wow, that was just incredible. Now, if you are a pundit and you lost your home because you picked one of these 3 games that looked like they were no-brainers that were going to go one direction, I apologize. I know a couple good sellers of double wides that we might be able to get you something with. It might not be a full king-size bed, but you'll be able to fall asleep in the back somewhere. Now, let's go to the breakdown. Let's go into some of these games. The round kicked off. Knights 26, Dolphins 12. Let's forget that. We all know that was really the Safety Bowl, right? The brothers going head-to-head for the first time ever. And I think what an incredible start that they ran into each other to start it off. What better thing than brotherly love to kick off the round, right? But the Knights continue their strong start. Kalen Ponga, I don't know if he's a Kiwi. I don't know if he's a kangaroo. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe he finds out he has Samoan blood. Who knows? But right now, what I will say is he's playing incredible footy. And because of that, no matter if Dylan Brown's coming next year, if Dylan Brown's coming next week, the Knights, Jack Cogger's looking good in the halves as well. He's dictating traffic. They're a strong-looking club right now. And for some reason, I've always liked Adam O'Brien. He can be a little prickly at times, but I like it when he gets success out of this team. And, I think we can remember a couple years ago when they run, 10 rounds in a row or whatever, which pretty much led Kalen Ponga to win and stealing the Dally M from Sean Johnson. But they can put together some really, really good football. And I think they got to get out of jail pass in round 1 because that, to me, was the Tigers match, and they just found a way to win. But when you're a good team, you find ways to win games like that, and that's what they did. And they continue rolling with this victory over the Finns. Now, the other question is, you look on the other side of this table is, what's going on with the Dolphins? That's 2 straight weeks. I'm a big Christian Wolf guy too. But at the same time, they're not getting this. And you hate to say it's the Wayne Bennett curse, another one of his prodigies taking over a club and them just not living up to the expectation that the old gunfighter left. I don't think that's going to be Christian Wolf. I think that sometimes it just takes, a coach a little bit of time to get his word. Hey, we can say one thing. Thank gosh he's not Jason Riles right now down there with the blue and gold. But I really think he'll get this together. They just have to get in a flow, and I think the Dolphins will get there sooner rather than later. Well, and here we go. The next match, Warriors and the Sea Eagles, the beginnings of the upsets of round 2. What a great way for the Waz to celebrate the start of their 30th season and honoring Captain Tohu Harris, then getting this 36-16 victory over the Manly Sea Eagles. I think we've watched for years Tohu Harris come out onto the field looking like he's being held together with a little bit of magnetic tape and maybe just a string of electric tape over some part of his body, but somehow getting through a match. But every time you watch the guy take a step, it looked like he was in pain or he might break. And what did he not do? Break. He would always show up week in and week out. And so that to me is what's really so sad about the situation of him having to hang it up just finally due to injury. But the Waz found a way to honor their old captain by getting this victory. We're going to have a deep breakdown of these 3 big upsets that happened. Well, I'm sorry about that, my brothers in milk, because you might not have thought that was an upset down in the nation's capital, but we're going to get to you sooner than later. But big victory for the Waz. And what did I tell you last week, Shedheads? I told you, yes, Manly looked great. Yes, Turbo looked great. Yes, DCE looks like, time doesn't ever catch up with them. I don't know about the hair, but still. What I'm saying is, we learned something in rugby league. Round 1 to round 2 shows the greatest growth of a team. Because you look like some teams have no idea what they were doing. And like I said, the next week, round 2, they're like, wow, that's the same team. And we experienced that a few times this week. But congratulations. It was great to see that. And like I said, we're going to go into a deeper dive in a few minutes on this one. Roosters 38, Panthers 32. In one of the biggest upsets, to me, I may have ever seen during the regular season. They had nothing. I'm saying nobody gave the Chooks a chance. But I said something numerous amounts of times on this show. And that is when all the money goes one direction and everybody looks like there's no way a team can win. I always said, bet the other way. Bet the other way. And or take the other team. Because to me, that's just sports. That's the karma of sports right there. I think teams feel that. I know when I played sports and we went up against a team that by every means looked like they were going to blow us out of the park, you always tried a little bit harder. You played like you had nothing to lose. And maybe that's what happened right there. Maybe that is what got into the Chooks' head. But I will say it was a brilliant coaching endeavor by Robbo because the amount of players they were missing. And this is another match. Like I said, we're going to go into a deep dive here in a couple seconds as we do the breakdown, the full deep dive into the round. But a great victory for the Roosters. But here's the great thing. And this is the thing where I think we cannot not say. They got outplayed most of the game, right? Dylan Edwards goes down with the groin injury, right? I think he's out 2 to 4 weeks. Who's still in there at the end but the Penrith Panthers? Who's still right there knocking at the door, about ready to send the game into Golden Point, but those guys? Tell me if that doesn't show you how brilliant of a club Penrith still is. And to me, that is something that probably wasn't talked about enough. I think a lot of people got very, very excited about the Chooks showing real depth and heart. But you can't say enough about Penrith. Again, a match they were never really in to an extent. And then late, they're right there. right there. A brilliant club. And even though they got the loss, I know that's probably why Ivan he didn't have a full smile on his face, but I think he just knows the heart and character of his club and that they're never going to quit. And if you're a coach and you have that, that makes you, okay, it doesn't help Ivan's hair color because he looks like he's probably older than what he is, but it puts a smile and makes your heart warm because your team is never going to give up. But great victory for the Chooks. Rabbitohs 25, Dragons 24. For some reason, I don't know who was controlling the thermostat, but I think they put it on broil because it was a steamy, steamy afternoon in Wollongong. It was insane. Water breaks, blah, blah, blah. But the Bunnies erasing that 12-point deficit again shows you just that chutzpah. Yeah, I dropped it. The chutzpah of Wayne Bennett and what he brings to a side, because they were really out of it. You almost, you got players, exchanging cash with a little bit of hand signal. You had everything going on in that stadium for the Dragons, but Cody, they just would not give up. The Rabbitohs, Cody looked great. He's looked incredible. You just know that sometimes there are certain coaches that bring things out of players, and Cody is a different player under Wayne's tutelage. But I just got to tell you, that was a really, really impressive game. And again, I go back to how Wayne finds these guys. And Humphrey, again, slotting that one-pointer to give them that 25-24 victory shows you everything. Can this guy squat a small vehicle, by the way, too? The legs of this dude, it's ridiculous. And they do say he likes to bang and clang and throw around the weight. But, did anybody think? I knew Manly was not happy they lost him, right? But did anybody think that this guy was going to be the number 7 and look like it's his jersey to lose? It doesn't look like there's anybody that's anywhere close to taking this 7 off of him. Now, he might have to do some yoga soon to make sure that he stays a little bit, how should I say, lean and mean, and have some flexibility, because right now he might be going out for the Mr. Olympia competition here in 2026. But he's a player, and he's a gun. And the way he slotted that kick was damn impressive. And I think, once again, the Rabbitohs are 2-0 to start a season when I don't think anybody gave them a chance with Latrell and the key pieces missing. They're missing their captain, for crimey's sake. So, great victory. And then you have Flano after the match, pretty much throwing Lachlan Ilias under the bus. But what a crazy game for him to pretty much, kind of throw Lachlan Ilias out there after what happened to him with his exit away from South Sydney. It had to be a curse. He's got to be thinking it's the Bunnies' curse because he didn't have the greatest of games. Then his coach kind of throws him under the bus. And we know that Flano has no problem with tough love. Flano has no problems calling a spade a spade. But I think that pretty much hit that kid on the chin, and I know that's got to be tough. So I think the next few weeks we're really going to see what Lachlan Ilias is made of and how Flano lifts him back up and gets his confidence back. So a lot to watch coming out of this match right now. Sharks 36, Cowboys 12. What a horrible performance by the Cows playing in front of their Townsville faithful. I'm a big Todd Payton man. I watched him when he was with the Warriors. I watched him the first season when he was, with North Queensland. And somehow that mojo is gone. And I think he's lost some key players that really provided some leadership. Val Holmes is gone. Chad Townsend's gone. You've lost some guys I think that were really, really important that added something to this club. And I think we're finding a problem with them having almost an identity crisis. Because the one thing the Cows have never had problem doing, and that is putting on some offense. But even their offense is clunky now. So the performance they had was not impressive whatsoever at all. You still have, Stone Street looking like, I guess the only match this guy has not had a double in was coming to Vegas. And, when he's on the biggest thing, Elvis is singing his theme song, Running Out of the Tunnel. But Sam Stonestreet's he's a player, man. He is a player. Ero and him both getting the doubles in that game. So the Sharkies look like they're kind of getting it together. It's Nico Hines can't miss almost a kick when he plays against the Cows. So Cronulla, you have to think, has a long way where they still can improve, but they sure looked good again, kind of getting it together. Either that or the Cows looked that bad, but 36-12, it just can't happen. And going into a big rivalry match, the Battle of Queensland coming up this coming round, the Cows better get it together and get it together quickly. Raiders 32, Broncos 12. The Baby Greens showing the rugby world that you can come back to Vegas not being sick. Sorry, Todd. Not come back from Vegas with a hangover. Not come back from Vegas losing all of your money. No. The Baby Greens showed you can come back from Vegas. You can take on the club that everybody's anointed as, oh boy, here come the Bronx. Here come Queensland's greatest. And they handled them. They handled them. Missing two of their biggest players. An incredible performance. And I'm so happy. And I swear to God, and I don't think he's taking any type of serum from his face, but I really think I've seen Ricky now lose 2 years in the best way, going backwards. I think Ricky now is 50 because this young team, being around this exuberance, being around this energy, having a team that just will fight for you, has really kind of provided a step back to him. And when I saw him in Vegas, he had a look in his eye of a guy that knew something that none of us else in the room knew. Like he had a couple aces up his sleeve. All aces. Looking Forward, one of my favorite songs. But anyway, all aces. And he pulled that off. And he's got something going down there. The Baby Greens look great. And again, this is one of the 3 games we're going to go in the deep dive about, but an incredible victory again by the Raiders. Tigers 32, Eels 6. All right, we can all admit it. Maybe the worst 20 minutes of football any of us have seen in a very, very long time. I think the last time we saw that, Cain and Abel were throwing rocks at each other and thought that it was a ball, because that was horrendous. The first 20 minutes, okay, your Shed, he has a few gray hairs in his head, right? He has a couple of those things mixed into the shrubbery upstairs. I may have had an addition of about 7 to 8 more gray hairs after the first 20 minutes of that game. It was bad. It was bad. But it didn't stay bad for the Tigers now, did it? Because the West Tigers, when they finally got the car, they might have blown their transmission, but when they finally got it into drive, they drove it. And they drove it well. A lot to be happy about if you're a Tigers fan. They looked really good. They turned Combank into the jungle. Sorry, Dom, I know you were there with the fam. Nothing personal. Go Tigers. But it was impressive. It was impressive that the way they played. And the thing that to me that's really sad coming out of this game is now all the talk is, can the Tigers hold on to Lachie Gallivan? Can the Tigers hold him? Well, does he want to go back to Parramatta? Let me ask you a question. After what we just saw on the field last weekend, why would Lachlan Gallivan want to go back to the Eels when he sees what he might have brewing at the Tigers? You tell me. Because even if he slots in the halves with Mitchell Moses, they're missing a lot for Parramatta. They're missing a lot. And Lachlan Gallivan looks like he's a smart enough young man that if he doesn't know that he might be on the cusp of something special with the West Tigers in the next 2 to 3 seasons, and you might want to build chemistry and build up, and I don't care if Moses is your manager. Sometimes as a player, it's your career. Sometimes as a player, don't forget, he works for you. Moses works for you, Lachlan. So hopefully, Breno is going to put this contract down in front of this young man. He's going to sign on, and the Tigers will continue to build together with him and Loai in the halves. And finally, the drought will be broken, and there might be some finals football in the near future for the West Tigers. But the only thing we can talk about is what we know right now, and is that the jungle came to Combank, and the Tigers blew out the Eels, 32-6. Bulldogs 40, Titans 24, playing their only game of the season at Belmore, which to me is an atrocity. Was the Bulldogs cheer one of the loudest we've heard for a very, very long time? And this is with a passionate fan base. I don't think anybody will say that Bankstown faithful, the Belmore faithful, that they are not a loud fan base, period, right? The Dogs of War, right? The Dogs of War. But, wow, you could really hear it. You could hear it. It came through loud and clear on all the broadcasts. And it really, I know the Suburban Ground has been a big talking point recently in the game about teams playing games and giving back to that. But there's just something special with looking at the fans on the hill. And that's something over here in the States we just don't get a lot of. You get that maybe in some college baseball ballparks where you've got a hill and you've got kids and families sitting on them. But we just don't have that in a lot of things over here. And to me, it's really special seeing those scenes. And I know that I want to get to a match at one of those stadiums where I can actually sit on the hill and just take it all in. Brookvale Oval has it. I know, that some of the stadiums have that ability for fans to experience that. And I don't think they know how cool that really is. But that being said, the Bulldogs looked good. Two big injuries with Burton going down and Big Billy Kickout going down. And I think it's both MCL injuries. So we could be looking anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. I don't know. You think a guy like Big Billy Kickout, he's got a lot more mass on that leg, how long that might keep him out. But, again, the Dogs look damn impressive. They look like they've got it going on the way that they need it to go. It'll be questioned who they put into the halves with Toby Sexton this coming week. But, and on the other side, you look at the Titans. You knew it was going to be a little bit of a tough ride for them right out of the blocks because you look at the new halves pairing, the new spine, AJ being there. Kenny is a freak though. Let's not even for a second not say that this kid's special. But Campbell and Brimson in the halves, that could take a little bit of time to get them firing all together. But Kenny he's a madman, and I think that the Gold Coast, by no means do I think they're in the problem of some of the other clubs that are out there that have a lot of questions in their sheds right now. I think Desi will get them going quicker than a lot of these other clubs. So it'll be interesting to see, but from their week 1 to week 2, how big the forward progress is for the Titans. But at this current juncture, the Bulldogs again look like they have the ability to be a solid top 4 side as long as they can stay healthy. Now, Shedheads, I told you earlier, I am still buzzing about this last round. You can hear the excitement, the exuberance in my voice. Now, one thing about sports that we love, even sometimes if it's our team that's the favorite and upset happens, is that unknown, right? That anybody can win on any given day, right? But heart and courage is something that we cannot measure. It's something that there's not a scale that I've seen out there that can actually weigh what somebody's heart and courage is. You can't put it under an x-ray machine to see. Okay, you can see your heart, but you can't really see if it's a Valentine's Day heart. You know what I'm saying? A big, big heart. But heart and courage is something that it's won wars, it's won battles before, right? When huge odds are against an army, they found a way to rally. But in the game like rugby league, physical prowess and the war of attrition is such a thing that we just bank everything on. It takes so much of the game, right? What's going to happen? And when you looked at some of these teams, the players that were missing, there was no way that these teams are going to beat some of these powerhouses that were coming into their barns to play them. And unfortunately or fortunately, depends which side you're on. I think for most of us, it would be on the fortunate side. We just took a wrecking ball to that ideology because heart and courage, even though we can't measure it, won out in these matches. Missing Victor Radley, Lindsey Collins, the Butcher Brothers, Sam Walker, Brandon Smith, none of us really gave the Chooks much of a chance to pull off the upset that they did. And I think, to me, there was one player on the field on that match that really set the precedent of what we were about ready to experience. And that player is Connor Watson. And I want to give you a little bit. Connor Watson didn't start off as a rugby league player. He was a rugby union player, right? And I think that's what adds to his physicality. He is a really hard-as-nails player. He may be Dirk Diggler's favorite player with that mustache on his upper lip, because I think that thing has its own zip code by now if he keeps letting it grow out. But he has been the real engine to me in that game that revved the Roosters and kept them going in the right direction. He was a key catalyst in what they needed to do, and that was run it sometimes and then put plays in the corner. But if you look at what he had, 2 tries, 102 running meters, 1 line break, 6 tackle breaks, and 49 tackles made. Let me say that again, 49 tackles made. That is the stuff and why I've always been a fan of him. I've been a fan of him since the 2017 Auckland Nines competition in Auckland, where the Chooks actually won that competition. They won it. You know why I know? Again, let's bring up a huge, great story for you about your Shedadamas and his history with the game. Latrell Mitchell kicked that championship ball in the crowd, and guess who almost caught it but Mrs. Shedadamas. Mrs. Shedadamas, without gloves, without any spray-on tacky in her arm, the ball hit her in the hands, and she dropped it. But what makes Mrs. Shedadamas such a Wonder Woman is she didn't even look down and say, honey, the ball's coming this way. And your Shedadamas was fumbling with the camera in his hands instead of looking at the ball. And as I've proven already from the Vegas competition, if a ball comes close to me, I'm going to catch it. Anyway, Mrs. Shedadamas dropped the Roosters championship ball. Still love her to this day. She's going to really hate me after I just conveyed that story again. But I watched Connor Watson getting back on task, playing that competition. The thing that I think that he's always had a problem with is he's never been able to find his true position. Because they played him in the halves in that 2017 Auckland Nines, and I thought that he might come in as a 6 because he likes to run, right? He likes to run the ball. He didn't seem to me much as a guy that was going to dictate the traffic and set up the play, but he was going to run with the ball. But he's never been able to find that true position of where to play. Went up to Newcastle, just couldn't find it up there either, and now he's back with the Chooks. And I'm going to say this right now. Last season, when Connor Watson played 9, I thought the Roosters were a better side than when the Hectic Cheese Brandon Smith played 9. And it's the ability, I think, that he has to really be quick off the mark, and he can run and take off. And he's got a different gear. By every means, I think he's faster than Brandon Smith. But I really like him in the 9. I do. And here's the sad thing. They've already signed Robson to come down from North Queensland next season. So here you go again. Connor Watson's like the odd man out. But I hope he puts together a really, really thorough season and gets to build off of what he's going to do. Now, what's really striking to me is that next week, Lindsey Collins and Victor Radley are going to be back. And it's going to be interesting to see if Connor Watson really wants to kind of run out of the dummy half position and how this is going to change the way that he plays the 9 if he doesn't take the line on as much. And that's going to be interesting to see. The other thing that I was really impressed about the victory was the way that Robbo had Sandon Smith and Chad Townsend attack the corners with the kick. When you have 2 players like Daniel Tupou and Dom Young on each wing, and you've got two bookends like that, why are you not putting jump balls up there? Why are you not letting those guys use their size to come down with stuff? And I think that was brilliant, and I think it showed something going forward, the way we could see the Roosters attacking by using those two big men on the outside. So it's going to be interesting to me, because what's so exciting for me is that you've got a team like the Sydney Roosters, who just had a great, great victory, probably the biggest victory during the regular season that they've had in a very, very, very long time. And they get this victory. They lost 10 in a row against the Panthers. I think the last time they beat them was like 2019. So that's a long, long time for you to lose against this team. And Robbo finds a way with this club that's missing those players to put together that type of a game. It was impressive. But what's going to be really interesting is they take on the team that also had the big week, the big win, and that is the Waz. And they've got to go to New Zealand for that. So very, very interesting. Now, speaking of the Waz, great transition, Shedadamas. I know, thank you very much. Andrew Voss said something to me that really resonated in the broadcast of the Manly Waz match. He said, "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas." And I can't say that I agree anymore. That was right on point. Because that team that I watched take on Manly was not the same team that I saw in Vegas. I thought for sure that the Waz were going to just out-physical the Raiders in Vegas. And that didn't come to fruition. They looked like they concentrated too much about attacking the corners and trying to get the ball out to the wing as fast as possible. And it just didn't work. It didn't work at all. But they clipped those seagulls, birds' wings, did they not, at GIO Media Stadium? And it was really impressive, because to start the match out, it looked bad. Because Turbo scores the first try, his only highlight of the game already, and Manly goes up 6-0, and you start going, oh boy, that's not going to be good for the Waz. But that was it. That was the last time Manly looked like they were going to be dominant in that game. Because the Waz then turn around and score 18 points in a row and really broke Manly's will. And during the match, Vossi talked about the match. I think it was last season when they played the Dragons, that looked a lot like that. Manly came in riding high. They looked strong early on. And then all of a sudden, it was kind of like somebody unplugged them. And the Dragons took them to task. And it's kind of freaky to an extent that Vossi says that, and it pretty much comes to fruition exactly what he said. One of the players that really to me stood out, and there's been rumblings about this guy possibly playing State of Origin, is Wade Egan. And again, he proved when he's on the field and he's not injured, he doesn't take a head knock or doesn't pull something, that he is a pretty darn good dummy half. He made 41 tackles and had one try in the game. And there's just something, the way that Wade Egan, when he's in the flow with the Waz, that they were really special. And if you want more proof of that, in Vegas, it was hard to even see if Wade Egan was on the field. He just didn't seem like he could ever get in a flow and get in a groove, and they kind of seemed off and yeah. But he showed again that when he is on top of his game and he's running at times, he looks at he really reads the line well too when he walks up to it. He provided a lot to that team. And it's going to be interesting to see going forward how well the Waz play as long as Wade Egan can stay healthy on the field. And if this does lead to him getting a look, because right now, Robson's not looking the greatest up for North Queensland. So you wonder, if Wade Egan puts together a few great matches here, if there's a chance that he could get a State of Origin call-up. But then you talk about the fire, the strike, and that was Tantua Piki and RTS. And these two guys, RTS, I think, had 167 running meters, but they both provided the electricity and strike every time they touched the ball. RTS was a man possessed, and it was so good to see him really kind of feel his game come back. But with the running meters that he had, the try that he had, Tuapiki looks a freak. He looks a lot, he as a player, he reminds me a lot of Keanu Kinney from the Titans. They both have that. They're a little bit slight. They're a little bit smaller player, but they're really fast. And the moment they see a hole, they're going to take it. And they're going to keep your team on the back foot when they take that type of a move and that type of attack. But they both looked really, really good. And I think, again, if this team can have this, we're not even talking about the bigs that they have up front, but they need that strike. And without Dalen in there right now, because of his wrist injury, RTS and Tuapiki are going to have to play that way week in and week out. But to me, the real feel-good story of the game was Luke Metcalf. And I know what type of scrutiny he was under. People were already talking about, Tamarie Martin coming in, that, Luke Egan was he was in way over his head. Luke Metcalf was in way over his head. And look at that. I just called him Luke Egan. That's the respect that he's getting right now. But Luke Metcalf, how should I say, quieted the doubters and did it emphatically. So much so, ending the game, he even did a salute of plugging his ears and closing your mouth. I think that's what he might have been telling people with that little salute he did in the end goal line. But he scored one try. He was 6 for 6 on his conversion attempts, which showed me a lot. His boot was good. And I got to admit, for a day, Luke Metcalf made a lot of people forget about Sean Johnson, and he filled out that number 7 jersey quite well. And they're going to have him play like that for the Waz to do the things that they really want to do this season for Andrew Webster. It's got to work that way, and it's got to stay on point. He's got to continue to lead the team around like that, and again, occasionally get it to the Scorpion King himself to run occasionally out of the halves with him. But besides that, it was a really, really good game and a great bounce back game for Luke Metcalf. And I hope he continues to play that well, because with the speed and the strike that he has to run the ball occasionally too, again, he doesn't have the swerve that Sean Johnson has, but he's got the speed of a young Sean Johnson, because we haven't seen that type of speed in the 7 for a while for a Waz halfback. So great game by him as well. Now, I told you guys last week, you cannot, in my mind, put all the chips on the table on Manly. And the reason I say that is because the moment Turbo goes down, and he went down this last week, they're saying it's a hamstring, but they said it was precautionary. There was no physical damage done. But then I just saw and I just read recently that right now, they're getting ready to put him under some testing to see if he's a go this week. I would be shocked if they play Turbo this week. I would be shocked. But I will tell you something right now. If DCE goes down as well, that bird's cooked. That bird is cooked. And I will tell you, when I saw DCE on all fours, and it really drew my eye very, very quickly to the screen, where I was like, DCE is down. Daly Cherry Evans is down on the field. And it was crazy in my mind, because I'm like, okay, well, he's getting ready to get up. And when he stood back up and then he quickly fell back down to his knees, I was like, wow. Because I just don't see that guy going down. I know he's 67 years old and he's getting, he's an older cat. But he always gets back up. DCE is one of the most durable players that I've probably seen in the entire time that I've watched the game. Like, I think they said he's missed 11 games in his career, maybe. But even with that being said, there's no way Manly wins with DCE and Turbo both injured and out of the game, right? They're saying that DC is going to play. They said it was back spasms, and they think that it was good. He said it started down in his calf and moved up to his lower back. But if anybody has had back spasms, and I've had them, and they make you, how should I say this? They make you forget that you are a man's man very, very quickly, because you can't even stand up. It drops you right to your knees. And the brain is kind of going, okay, stand back up, and the body's like, no, you're not standing up right now. And that's what I saw with DC in that match. But the good thing about back spasms, they usually can go away. They've been working on them all week. He's probably a go in my mind this weekend. But Turbo, I would not be surprised. And that to me is why Manly is such a fickle team about winning the competition. And why one week they can look like they can beat anybody, and then the next week, you're always waiting for Turbo to go down. That's how I feel about it. You're always waiting if he's going to get out of a tackle, or if he's going to really overstride, even though they did change his running style when he was doing some of his rehab in Philadelphia. But even that being said, I still am always like, is he getting back up after the tackle? And you can't win the competition in my eye if you're so in need of a player to be out there week in and week out like him, because they're not the same team with Turbo out of there. So again, that showed its face this weekend. Now, Baby Greens, I haven't forgotten about you. I have not forgotten about you. I've met some incredible people in Vegas. We talked about them a little bit last week. About my boy Todd. I'm so happy he made it back home. I know that he might have to sell his home too after paying some of the medical bills from his incredibly nice partner, very, very friendly. She got sick. And now that I hear about it, I hear everybody pretty much came back from Vegas who went back down under, came back with some type of sickness, and not just all bottle flu either. So I don't feel as bad as the Shedda coming back with being down for a week as well. But, wow. Everybody preaches size. Everybody preaches physicality, big forward packs, on and on and on, right? That's what everyone says is going to win the game. The Raiders, the Baby Greens, 2 weeks in a row have gone up against teams that are supposed to have gigantic forward packs, that are supposed to decimate them, that are supposed to make them not even have a chance in the ballpark, right? What have they proven? The Baby Greens have sat back. They've popped a bottle. And they've asked one question. Can you catch us, and can you run with us? Let me say that again. Can you catch us, and can you run with us? And for 2 weeks now, they haven't been caught, and they haven't been run with. And the Baby Greens are 2-0. And what blows me away is a game that a lot of people thought they had no chance whatsoever to actually be in, right? They're missing their captain. They're missing Kid Flash. And Kid Flash would be Xavier Savage. But to play that way, missing those two guys, right? To play that way, missing those two guys, to me, was what really makes me think that there's something forming. There's something brewing down in Milk Country, all right? And I know sometimes, and I will admit it, the Raiders do not get the love. They do not get the adoration that they deserve. But they're proving it, and they're not asking for it anymore. They're taking it. And in that game, by the 18th minute, they were already up 12-0. And I knew that the Broncos were in trouble because Madge's chin extended an extra 3 inches. That long face told me a lot in the coach's box. That Madge sensed either one, his team had been listening to its press a little bit too much, or two, he knew they were running into a buzzsaw. That the Raiders had set a trap, and that the Broncos don't play too well down at the nation's capital as well. Now, the Broncos did fight back. They made it 16-10 at half, and they looked like maybe, if they came out in the second half, that they would have a chance to maybe tie this thing up and really get into the wrestle with the Baby Greens. But the Baby Greens, they put that comeback aspiration to bed quickly, did they not, Shedheads? Because scoring the 2 tries really quick right out of halftime pretty much put it to bed. That pretty much ended the game, and they rode it out 32-22. And I got to say that I was concerned when it was 16-10 at half, but they really showed the steel that Ricky's got in him. And when you have a young team like that, the belief that has to come into that side, the belief that they have to have in themselves, even though they haven't made long runs into finals yet or played in a grand final yet, they're showing that Ricky has put belief into them and that they don't have to have everybody on the field to be successful. And then you got this guy, the new slim and trim Big Red, Corey Horsburgh, Big Papa, getting a try, one of those first 2 tries that started off, hair flowing in the wind. Those guys provided the hit. They provided the physicality that the Baby Greens needed. But I'm going to say Corey Horsburgh looks incredible, does he not? And I guess you can say that everything's been mended between him and Sticky from last year. Because I think Sticky said that, Corey, you're fat. I don't know if he said it for sure, but I know what he took to heart because that's the most trim I've seen this guy. And he's playing with an edge that we did not see all of last year. And then you got Sebastian Chris. This guy seems like he gets better week in and week out, game after game. And again, he put together just an incredible game, a game that team needed, just as much as they needed Big Red and Papa to play. This guy runs for 162 running meters, 2 line breaks, 1 line break assist, 2 try assists, and 8 tackle breaks. 8 tackle breaks. Sebastian Chris, he showed out in Vegas too. Now, he might not have been as exciting as watching Kid Flash, Xavier Savage run up and down the field. But Sebastian Chris is starting to take on that. I know he hasn't been there long enough to use the L word, legend. But he gives you everything he's got game after game. And again, that's what Ricky's getting out of all of his players. Starling, at the 9, these guys believe. These guys feel like they have something to prove. And what's really interesting to me is after the performance they had this last week, they go up to Brookvale Oval this week. And they take on an injured Manly side, and a Manly side who you would have to say feels like they're under pressure. Which Manly are they? Are they week 1 Manly, or are they week 2 Manly? And that is what the rugby league world wants to know. That is what the rugby league world is looking at, is which Manly are they going to face? Because right now I think we know what Baby Green they're going to face. Up the milk is coming, all right? And I want to see this team, now with Savage, now with Tapani back, how they play going into Brookvale Oval. It's going to be interesting. I'm excited. Now, as we go into the 40-20, to me it's already hard to believe it's round 3, but it's round 3 and we already have the grand final rematch between the Melbourne Storm and the Penrith Panthers. This is stuff that usually we have to wait half the season before we watch 2 juggernauts run full bore off the back fence at each other, right? But we get it round 3. And if you even listen to last week's podcast, I even hinted I'm so excited for round 3, right? Because this match is kicking it off. It's not just that it's in round 3, it's kicking off the dance, right? We go right into Song 2 by Blur to start the thing off. So, to say that I'm excited is an understatement. I am beyond excited. You've got a Melbourne Storm team that is right now the favorites to lift the Probin Summons trophy to at the end of the season. And then you have the team that has won 4 in a trot that year after year continues to prove, bet against us, we're just going to take your winnings. And that is what we have coming in a matter of hours. what's remarkable to me about the Penrith Panthers is since 2021, listen to the players they've lost. Matt Burton, Viliami Kikau, Stephen Crichton, Spencer Leniu, Jack Cogger, Appy Curacao, Jerome Luai, Sanui Taruva, Kurt Capewell, James Fisher-Harris. Can you picture the squad that you would have if you had all those guys in the same jersey? I can't think of another team that could have done what the Penrith Panthers have done, losing all of these guys. Now, they didn't lose them all at once. I know that, Shedheads. I know that. But still to lose them, and to every time that remotivates them to say that we can still win. It just pushes them. We can still win. We can keep this thing going. But you know what that is, Shedheads? That is called one word: culture. And when you have a winning culture, and you have belief in there, you have a coach that you believe in, you have, Yo and Cleary, two guns that you believe in, they're already going to go down as Penrith greats, right? Penrith Hall of Famers, these two guys. When you have that, you don't think anything is not possible. And I would be a crazy man if I took any money and bet against Penrith to win 5 in a row. And the funny thing is, when I always say that, I think back, it's been years now because they've won 4 in a row. But I remember watching the Matty John show, and Matty actually going, he just paused. He looked at that team, he looked down, he looked back at the camera, and he looked at the guys on the couch, and he said, I wouldn't be surprised if this team doesn't have the ability to win 6 or 7 trophies in the time that Cleary and Yo are there. And people looked at him like he was crazy. Well, Matty, they've already got 4 in the cabinet, and that means they only need to find a way to win 3, and Cleary isn't even 30 yet. So you have to think that they're trending in the right direction right now to get that 7 that Matty talked about. But this team has culture, and they have belief, and it's going to be hard for them to be dethroned in my eyes. But then you have the other side of this game. Team Larrikin. All right, maybe not the entire team, but the Storm. They've got to feel good about themselves. They've got to think that right now is their time. And you can't say that you can't believe that they're maybe not speaking the truth. Because the thing that they have right now that they haven't had for a long time is a fully healthy spine. Pappenhausen, Hughes, Munster. And then you got the man himself, the man that might be the nicest guy in the game, Harry Grant, at 9, the captain. The crazy thing when you think about Harry Grant is it's just been a few years ago that Cameron Smith was running around the 9, and he retired, and everyone was like, wow, we're never going to see anybody to replace this guy for a long time. Maybe not in my lifetime, right? And within a few years, not that people have forgotten about Cameron Smith, but the Melbourne faithful are pretty happy with this guy. They're pretty happy with Harry Grant. And why wouldn't they be? And so, that being said, you've got a healthy spine for the Melbourne Storm that look like they might be the best spine in the competition right now. They're healthy. They look strong. And it is a first time we're actually seeing them all play together as healthy as well. And I'm going to say this. To me, it looks like Pappenhausen has added a gear. And it looks like Munster is back to his sidewinder snake self. I know it's tough for me to say the snake, but anyway. Because he's got 2 new bionic hips where he's running side to side. He's taking the line on. And we didn't see that at all last year. Munster played all last year in pain. And he's not. And he looks like a kid that's been handed a brand new scooter, brand new skateboard, brand new motorbike, because he's jumping on it. And when I watched him continue to attack the line and getting off, passes, I was like, wow. All right. Well, that's not good for the rest of the competition. So, with these guys playing this way, looking this strong. You know now why Harry Grant did the entire interview on NRL 360 this week with a gigantic grin on his face the entire time, because they feel, that they were playing with house money. And that leads to what we deal with tonight, because you've got a Penrith team after they lost to the Chooks last week that are going to come in beyond motivated. They feel they have a point to prove. They feel like they've got to go out there and show the rest of the pundits and the rest of the competition, no. We're fine. Everybody loses. We're fine. And then you've got a Melbourne Storm team that's got vengeance on their mind. It's one thing to have vengeance on your mind if you don't have the amount of bullets in the gun to pull off vengeance, right? But when you've got an arsenal and you're walking into this battle with the amount of bullets and strike that they have, vengeance is a dangerous, dangerous thing to go up against. And that's what sets up a perfect match for me, Shedheads, is that you've got both teams with a point to prove, and they're going to run off the back fence right into each other's face. Now, I know Dylan Edwards is out this week, but again, we're talking about Penrith. Next man up. I thought we might have a chance of seeing Blaise Talangi come in and finally show his head for the first time, but he is not playing in the number one this week. So, but again, does it really matter who they put back there? They could throw Dane Laurie back there for all we know. I know right now he's not penciled into play, but they have so many moving parts on this team where they just fill in and they just come right back out. So I hope you're as excited as I am, Shedheads. We're a matter of hours away from catching this match, because I think it's going to be something special and something magical here. Well, I don't even know how to say this, but it looks like we have another rock to throw in the Roosters Rabbitohs hate pool, or hate pond, whatever you want to say. And it's none other than the hectic cheese himself, Brandon Smith. He is the boulder that's been thrown in, that's put the ripple back into the pond of hate. The Cheese has signed a 2-year deal now to go from the Tricolors over to the Bunnies. And again, we have another player switching sides in this hated feud of two teams that just do not like each other. And I've got to tell you, Shedheads, I am excited, because I don't want anything more than the Book of Feuds to get any more brutal than this. And I think it's what's going to be interesting to see if Nick Politis and Trent Robinson let the Cheese leave early. Now, to me, I'm kind of like a coin flip with this, because you know that the Chooks don't want to do anything to help the Rabbitohs, right? But would they make that change if they thought they could get a little bit more change back or something? Or would they really set Brandon Smith? Because I think he is penciled to come back around round 10 from that ACL injury from last year. So that'll be interesting to see if possibly, Uncle Nick lets him even put on a Roosters jersey ever again. But that being said, I will say this right now for the Hectic Cheese. To me, there's not a better coach that could inherit Brandon Smith that will get the most out of him than Clint Eastwood himself, Wayne Bennett. Because Wayne will now look, and I think what you'll see is that Wayne Bennett will use him a lot like Bellyache did down with the Storm, where you're going to see Brandon Smith play in the 9, you're going to sometimes see him play in the 13. And you're going to see him maybe even changing position on field of the way that he's being utilized. But again, we're talking about Clint Eastwood. We're talking about Wayne Bennett. We're talking about a guy that can get players to run through adamantium walls just for him, and because of the belief he puts into his players. Campbell Graham was sitting there talking about how great it was to have Wayne Bennett back. Cody Walker, we've seen the way that this guy's playing. It's like he's gone, he's reversed the clock back 3 years the way he's playing. He always looked like he was playing mad under Jason Demetriou, but he just seems like there's just an air. He's a captain. He's now got responsibility that Wayne, again, put on his shoulders, and he's accepting it. So I think that it's not a better landing spot for Brandon Smith than to go to the hated rivals and to revitalize his career. It will be interesting, again, to see how quickly he gets there. Does he get there this season, or does he really just come in next year? And I guess time will tell on that. But the Book of Feuds gets even more feudier. Yeah, I said that, feudier. So, let's go into the breakdown of round 3. Let's get some picks in. We went 4 for 8 last week. We're catching up. But I feel like I'm getting my stride. You see what I did right there, too? Between round 1 and round 2, what did I say? We get better. Some teams get better. You start getting your groove, your mojo going. So we went 50 now. We went 50%. And we're going to build it up right now. We're going to go even better this week. I can feel it in my bones. Starting off, round 3, tonight, like I said, matter of hours. Panthers versus the Storm. Shedheads, I've got to do it. It's down in Melbourne. I'm going to go with the Storm. I love books of vengeance. I love revenge movies. I'm going with the Storm to take the Panthers. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I'm taking the Storm to get the victory to kick off round 3. Friday night, Roosters versus the Waz over in New Zealand. I'm going with the Waz. I think that it's not that I don't think the Roosters won't play well again, especially with Vic back, but I think the Waz will defend the island. I think they will defend the Rumble Islands, and I think they get the victory to go 2 in a row. Then we've got the Battle of Queensland, Cowboys versus the Broncos. Tomalolo's back. Jake Clifford's back in the halves now. He's come back from that hernia surgery. I think those are going to be 2 key additions. I do. And that is why, Shedheads, your Shedadamus is going out on a limb. I'm taking the Cowboys to get their first victory of the season at Suncorp Stadium. That's right, I've said it. I'm taking the Cows, Sean, and I think they're going to get this victory. I do. So the Cows over the Broncos. Saturday, Rabbitohs versus the Sharks at Shark Park. I'm going with the Sharkies. I know Wayne Bennett has had the boys playing well, but I think we have not seen the best of the Sharks. I think we started to watch Nico wake up last week, and him and Tricky have not played a full match together where they've both been kicking at the same time. So I've got the Sharks beating the Rabbitohs. Tigers versus the Dolphins. I'm taking the Tigers. I think that last match is the building point of what we're going to see for the West Tigers this season. I think the Dolphins, they still seem a little discombobulated. I've got the Tigers winning their second in a row. And to finish off Saturday, Knights versus the Titans. I know the Knights have played well the last couple weeks of the season, or the first 2 weeks of the season, but I'm going to take the Titans. I think that, like I said, between their first game and the second game, the improvement that usually happens with clubs, I think Desi's had a chance now to see what works, what doesn't work in his combinations. I'm going with the Gold Coast Titans to get their first victory of the season. And then Sunday, we have 2 matches. It kicks off with the Bulldogs versus the Eels. I know that they're missing Big Billy Kickow and Burton, but I'm going to go with Toby Sexton. I think he has enough to guide them around. I've got the Bulldogs beating the Eels and dropping them to 0-3. And the last game, and I think a game that could say a lot for the rest of the season, the Raiders and up the milk, the Baby Greens, going up to Brookvale Oval to take on the Manly Seagulls. I'm doing it. I'm all on board. I'm all on board. Raiders take this game. I've got the Raiders going up, winning at Brookvale Oval, going into the Fortress, and starting the season 3-0. And that's my turkey call right there. I am going with the Raiders to get that victory over the Seagulls. So here, let's go over again the picks. We've got the Storm, the Waz, the Cows, the Sharkies, the Tigers, the Titans, the Dogs of War, and the Baby Greens are my picks for this week. My gun of the round. It could have been 3. Could have been Luke Egan. It could have been James Tedesco. But I'm going with Sinui Turuva. That's right. The man that has brought the claw back to the NRL. The slash across the chest of the paw of the West Tigers. 3 tries, 168 running meters, 2 line breaks, 4 tackle breaks, 1 101 steal, and 7 tackles made. Turuva did something that I have not seen a player for the West Tigers have and show for a very long time. And that is fight. And that is spunk. And that is belief. And him celebrating and doing the claw and everything had the faithful going crazy. We had Tigers chants going on inside Combank. It turned into the jungle. And I think that comes out from this player. And I think that's the other thing. The other reason I picked Turuva is because it wasn't just all the numbers. It was the energy he brought to that team. So that's what I've got. Him and Bula, I think, are going to be something special, their combination. But Turuva is my gun of the round. Now, Shedheads, I'm going to start something, and I'm going to need you guys for this, and I want to make this a part of the show. Reach out to me off of my Instagram page. Send me a message off of that. I want to start doing something the next few weeks where I start reading some of your questions on air. I'm going to pick a couple from you Shedheads because it's your show as well. It's not just me. It's you and me in this. So send me some questions. I'll go through them, find a couple to read. If you want to know a little bit about your Shedadamus, I don't know if I'll tell you, but I might. But let's do that. Let's make this a little bit of an interactive part of this show where I read a couple questions, answer it, and make us, how should we say this, a good spine, if you know what I mean. So, but until next week, Shedheads, I'm Corey Jackson. This has been Outside the Sheds. Stay out of trouble. Don't get caught. Try to do something well for somebody else. You know, not all of us live in the divided states, okay? Just try. Just try, Shedheads. Be better. But until next week, see ya.
And that was another fantastic episode of Outside the Sheds with Corey Jackson, talking all things NRL and all things sports. So please remember to smash the subscribe button and share this with your family and friends and show them what Australian sport is all about.